Are you a hustler who's been looking for a podcast that dives into the minds of the relentless hustlers, the game changers, and the unapologetic leaders who've conquered the business world? This is Pushing the Bar, where success isn't just a destination, it's a journey. We'll get into the minds of the relentless hustlers. You're about to get the real and raw truth about the highs, lows, the good, the bad, and the ugly of the entrepreneurial battlefield. You know, the place where dreams clash with reality and success is earned, not given. Shawn has been in the trenches, from a Verizon wireless salesman to building a damn tech empire worth millions. Damn! He's seen it all and lived to tell the tale. No sugar-coated fluffy crap here. Just raw, real-world advice served straight up. We're pushing the bar because success, it ain't gonna push itself. Now, here's Shawn Torres.
What's up, everybody? It's been a little while since I did a podcast, so I've been traveling. I've been all over the place, conferences and visiting some clients, and I'm excited to get back on here and put some content out. I got a great friend of mine that we actually got to spend some time together recently at a conference. He is a badass sales leader that I met not too long ago, and has just impressed me. Brent Morris, the VP of all revenue with Success IT. So thank you, Brent, for coming on today, man. I'm excited to talk about sales and your journey and what, you know, things look like in the landscape of the market. And, you know, hopefully we can get some good content out there to help some people. So what's up, man?
Nothing. Thank you for having me. I mean, that intro got me hyped up, man. I feel like I got to go lift weights.
It is. I know. I missed the gym this morning. I flew back from Dallas at like 4:30. I had to leave. So that's my plan today when I leave here. That's where
So
I'm
you probably got a lot of
to.
energy, huh?
Yes, I got to deplete some out before I take my wife out for dinner tonight.
Right on.
Well, look, man. You know, I think we all know what, you know, people want to hear. I think that the world we're in today is different, right? We just came out of probably two of the best years from a financial perspective, with low interest rates and lots of free money floating around and all these different programs and in our world. I mean, I'm sure, you know, you and I have talked about this, and just tech alone, the demand for our services, just for all the viewers to know, Brent and I are in the exact same space, just in different parts of the country. So, you know, in the managed service game and IT and professional services. So, you know, what's your thoughts, man? I mean, you know, we got like this influx of business over the last 2 years. Not saying it was easy, right? It's still hard, but then you got all of a sudden coming into this year, election year, interest rates are through the roof. You have less growth. You have all these layoffs going on, all these companies, you know, what's your thoughts on some of those challenges and things we need to be doing differently?
Yeah, it ain't easy. You know, I mean, I think you did a good job of talking about what 22 and 23 were like. They were good. And it seemed, I think easy is the wrong word. Bountiful might be a better word. It was, yes. You know, there was we overexceeded last year. We overexceeded in 22. And here we are in Q1 of 24. And things just seem like we're running into headwinds. Like we're trying to knock down walls, and the wall's not as easy to knock down anymore. And so it's hard to put my finger on it, right? I mean, the reps are doing what they need to do. We're out in the community. We're networking like crazy. We're doing all the things that we've done. I mean, shoot, I've done a number of events this year. I did a co-pilot event on January 20th. I had 300 people attend that thing. I did something for Power Platform in February. I had 160 people in it. And so there's interest, right? There's a lot of opportunity out there, but for some reason, it's hard to put pen to paper for some folks. I don't know if you're running into the same thing.
We are, man. And I think some of it too, like, especially with where we are right now with like AI and all these different things and changes going on in our space. I think people are just kind of pausing and saying, all right, like what's about to happen. Right. And I think even like from a growth perspective, we're still doing the things that are necessary that we need to do. I just think that what I've been preaching to my sales team is that we're going to have to work hard. We're going to have to probably do double the work than what we did last year to get the same results. So be prepared in that. You're going to have to really solution sell, right? Especially to get companies to make and create budgets to spend money, because it's not just, this, man, it's not just about, especially in our space, getting the sale. It's also ensuring that the organization that's coming in is going to allow you to make the change necessary to get them up to the standards and actually make the investments in their environment,
I agree. So you touched on two things. One, solution selling, and two, the difficulty that we're running into right now. And whenever I run into difficulty, if I'm smart and, and I take a look at things, I'm looking at the fundamentals. So I go back to the basics. It's spring training time for baseball. And what do professionals do every time they go to spring training or any kind of kickoff to the season? It's about taking grounders and batting practice and doing just the basics. And sometimes, we forget because of our success that it's the basics that matter. And so we've got to go back to, all right, how many dials did we make today? How many doors did we knock? Do we have the right messaging? Are we progressing the deal forward the right way? And that invokes like the solution selling side of things. So am I sitting down with prospects and asking questions that are genuine in curiosity and not how many computers do you have and how many servers do you have and what kind of licenses do you have? They don't care.
Let me go get you a quote.
Yeah, they don't care to talk about that any more than I care to listen to it. And I don't mean that disrespectfully about those numbers. We have to.
No, you're right, man. That shit doesn't work, man.
It doesn't. And so I think when I can sit down with somebody who's given me their time because I asked, and I can find out what matters to them about the work that they're doing and how that influences the organization that they're at, then we're getting somewhere. But for me, I've got to be genuinely curious. I can't be doing it for me. I've got to be asking Shawn Torres, like, what matters to you? What are you stressing you out today? What's in your way? How does tech play a role in that?
And sometimes, and I think that, it's always interesting in those conversations because people don't always know what's in their way, and that's where True. I think I've been trying to focus a lot with my team is that sometimes you got to get in there and truly start asking questions around the business and getting a better understanding of how they're operating, what they're doing, how they're doing it, to be able to educate them on a different way. Because, you think about it, man, you got these companies that are out there today that have been operating in a way that maybe it's working, right? But they don't also know that, like, could it work easier in a way to where they don't have to do those certain things that they were doing before, and sometimes people just don't even know that, like we've been in a situation several times where I'm talking to a prospect and they're like, oh, I handle that myself. And it's like, well, yeah, but should you be handling that yourself?
Right.
Or should you not? Should you be outsourcing this to gain? Because, what's the one thing we can't get more of, right? Time. And in most businesses, time equates to money. No more order taking, sell solutions. You're right, EJ. That's a factual statement.
Well, and kind of to the point that you made, we have to know who we're talking to too. And so in our space, we're talking to office managers, IT people, we're talking to CFOs, and we're talking to owners. And each one of those four positions have different cares and concerns. And so if I'm not aligning with those cares or concerns, then I might be missing the opportunity to move a deal forward. And so if I'm meeting with an office manager, he or she may not care about the profit of the organization. They care about keeping the phones working, right? And if I'm meeting with an IT guy, they don't care about profit either. They care about the expense line and they care about how they're going to get more of what they need to do their job. And they've got a capacity issue almost all the time, right? They've got the pressure from leadership saying, you got to deliver. Why are these projects taking so long? And meanwhile, those people are working 60, 70 hours a week. So there's just stress beyond belief. And that's where we have an opportunity to align with their interests, right? So we have to know who we're talking to and how to appeal to the stress that they feel.
Well, I think that, it brings up a good point, man, because I think what that does too, what a lot of people don't realize is being a salesperson is hard. I've done, building this company from the ground up. I've done all the jobs. I've been the field technician. I've been the project engineer. I've been the help desk. I've been the AR, AP, CFO, you name it, right? And I tell everybody that this job, you're spinning so many plates and having to adapt constantly to different scenarios and the mental stress and capacity that it can put on. I tell everybody, there's a lot of people that want to go into sales, and I get it. Like, I love it. But there's a lot of people that get into it for the wrong reasons. And that's where I see a lot of, you have to have a lot of grit. I've noticed like people that come in that can manage high stress tend to do a little better. And I'm not always the one that can manage high stress environments, but you have to be able to do that. And I think you have to be okay with failing, because shit, man.
You're gonna fall flat on your face a lot.
A lot.
You're hitting some really like hard points that I've experienced in my life. I've got a buddy of mine who owns another MSP competitor here in town that I respect and like a lot. And one of the things he says about salespeople is, this is not a job you can't do. It's a job that you won't do. Like, I don't need a degree to do this job. I just need to have the willingness to pick up the phone and get my butt kicked all day long. And that is one of the hardest things. I got fired from my first sales job because I was afraid of the phone. And I remember intimately what it was like to go home at the end of the day, walk into the apartment that I was in with my wife at the time, and not feel good about myself because I only made 30 dials that day and didn't set any appointments. Now, after I got fired and I had the experience of learning what it was like to actually make cold calls and have that determination and grit, I could walk home in a day after having made 80 or 90 calls and not having set any appointments, but I could hold my head high because I did the work, right?
Yes.
And if I did the work, I could feel good about that. That's all that mattered. And so you're going to fail in this job. That's for sure. Right. And if you're doing it well, you fail every darn day.
Yes.
That's a sign of, I've got some great salespeople that work for me, people that worked harder than me and more successful than me. I learn from them all the time. And one of the things I respect most about them is they get up every day and they do it again.
Yes. And I think that goes into, it's funny. I had one of our sales directors tell me the other day, he goes, it's either will or skill. And this job is all about will, because you can have some skill. I'm not saying you cannot have an ability to connect with people, an ability to ask the right questions, and an ability to teach people. But you're right, man. I think 90% of this job is will. Like, are you going to make the calls that are necessary to do each day? Are you going to do the follow-ups? Are you going to send the emails? I've watched so many reps, man. And like I do that shooting the shit every other, week with my team where they can ask me questions. And I always like to go in. It was interesting because like when I look at their activity, I always find like they'll call a prospect, right? And they'll call one time. And then like they don't get an answer. And then it kind of like goes by the wayside. And I was trying to explain, like, you have to measure out your prospects. And I always ask the question, like, why are you calling them? Like, what are you calling them for? And I've watched for the years where like some reps are just trying to make their dials, like, and
right.
They're not real. I always say like call with intent because you want to help them and you can help them, and call to be curious, call to learn. You should have some motive on, like, don't just dial to dial for activity. You can always see that, right? Because you can look at their talk time and I hate it's, we've struggled, man. We're like, what's the number of calls they should make in a day? Like, we have a new sales rep, Erin Fleming, who is just like, she could probably make 5 calls and get 5 appointments. Like, she's just like,
what's her name again?
Send you some of these calls, dude. It's freaking impressive, dude.
Erin, if you don't like working with Shawn, hit me up. Okay.
Yeah. She is just like good. And it's hard. Cause like, I even noticed some of the reps that have been here a little longer that are around her. Like sometimes I think that can be a little intimidating for
For
people,
sure.
And you just gotta you gotta find what works for you. I get so many people, man. I just went to Exchange, right? We were there together,
Yep.
and I have so many of these, IT owners and asking me questions like, man, how I don't know how to sell, and it's like, well, it's not that you don't know how to sell. You're not willing to do the work that it's going to take necessary, which is fine. You got to find somebody that's willing to come in, that's going to make the dials, that's going to understand. And I think some of it boils down to understanding how to monetize the situation, right?
Yeah, you're hitting on a couple things. So I want to just interject if I can real quick. So
Yeah, let's
first of
go,
all,
man.
like if there's anything that I've learned about sales and the people that are doing it, it is that his job is it's really hard. We live in a glass house, and I absolutely respect the work that every one of them does. And when you talked about the difference between activity and value-based activity, and you talk about Aaron's ability to set appointments versus maybe mine, and I'm just going to dial the phone until I get somebody on the phone, and I'm going to try to bulldoze them into an appointment. That's not what I do anymore. It's what I did. But you know, I'll respect any of that activity as long as there's that determination to get what you're trying to get. And when I hire salespeople, I don't say, "Hey, Shawn, you got to go call and make 80 dials every day." I worry about the result. I want you to set qualified appointments. So I don't care if that means you network with people really well, you know how to leverage LinkedIn or any of the other social platforms, or if you're going to go and door knock. I don't care. Like, I don't want to tell somebody how to do the very thing that generates them the dollars that they need to make. I want to hold them accountable to the result. And for me, it was dialing. Like, I could pick up the phone and I could hammer away at the phones. And the point that I got to was like, if I'm going to have to sit on the phone and get my butt kicked for 6-7 hours, I'm going to get something out of it. Like, I'm not going to do that work and come up empty handed. And so for me, it was about doing the work and doing it consistently, because it's like kind of like riding a wave, right? Once you get on it, if you get off that wave, sometimes it's a fight to find another one. And so I never wanted to get off that wave. So if I made calls on Monday, I wanted to make sure that I was making them Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Maybe that's why I still do it.
Well, that's, by the way, you mentioned seeing each other in Exchange. So you shared with me that you get in and you cold called with the reps. And I'm ashamed to say that I don't do that as often as I should, because it's not beneath me, by the way. Just because I'm lucky enough to run sales and marketing at this organization, it doesn't mean I don't have the responsibility to do the same darn thing I'm asking people to do. And so I got home last week and I cold called twice with reps. And I set an appointment, but it was with a wrong kind of client. It was a small organization. But for me, that was how I'd get going. And so I set that appointment, and I'm going to go run it on Monday, right? I'm going to go meet this organization. There are 15 people. They're probably not the right size for us, but I get to meet somebody. I get to understand the way in which they do their work. I might learn something about their industry, and I've created a relationship that might benefit me in 1, 2, or 3 years. And that's the other thing that I don't think salespeople realize is it's such a right now game. But every single phone call is like planting a seed, right? And I've been lucky enough to have somebody call me out of the blue a year and a half later. "Hey, Brent, this is so and so from XYZ company. We talked, I don't know, a year ago," and I'm just as caught off guard by them in that call as they are by me when I call and say, "Hey, we talked a year and a half ago," right? But they say, "Hey, we're ready to meet now." And so if we do our job with integrity and we do it with diligence, man, good things happen when you least expect it too.
Well, that's how you build that pipeline. Like if I look at, Terry, who's been extremely successful here, when he first started, it was a bumpy road, but today, like it's not. And I kept explaining to him, I was like, "Terry, think about it, man. All these connections you're making and all these people you're meeting, at some point, they're going to be ready. And it's not no, it's when."
Right.
And today he doesn't have to make as many dials to do what he needs to do. So I think that, for new people getting into sales, whether if you're getting into it at a new company or it's your first job and you're getting into outside sales, don't forget the time you put in the beginning when it's really hard. It gets easier over time because it becomes repetitious, and it's that consistency in the beginning. You won't have to do that much. Again, I love to reference it to like bodybuilding or losing weight, right? if you go to the gym the first time and it's been a while and you work out, the next day when you get up, it is going to probably hurt.
Yep.
And most people don't go because it hurts. But if you just keep going, the hurt doesn't really go away. It just gets easier to I guess deal with that. And it's not as painful, right? You should be getting sore, just like in sales. Like, it's going to be hard. It's just going to be a different hard, you know? And I watched so many people, and I was preaching this last week, and it's like, I watch these people and I look on LinkedIn and it's like 2 years. And you ask them all the time why they never really made any money. Because I will say that the first year and a half of your job as a true hunter, sales professional is building pipeline, and it builds on top of it. And it just keeps building.
You know, I had one of my first sales directors, when I first started for him, he sat me down in his office, and I don't remember how we got into this conversation, but he said, you know, I'll never have to interview for a job ever again. And I said, what do you mean? And he reached behind him and he pulled out this 3-ring binder and he put it on the desk and he opened it up and he showed me W-2s, every award he ever won. He showed me stack rankings against where he was at. He had every piece of information. He had his data, like the number of his activity data in this book. And he said, if somebody doesn't hire me when they see this, they're stupid. Like, dang. All right. I don't need a resume. I don't need a degree. I don't need anything other than these numbers. And what's cool is I've got a 19-year-old son who's just now getting into sales. And one of the questions he asked me was, Dad, you know, how am I going to get into these higher level sales organizations? And I said, buddy, just know your numbers. And he said, what do you mean? I said, listen, if somebody came to me with a college degree or an advanced degree, and they said they were great at sales and they interviewed really well, but they didn't have the stories to back it up, versus somebody who showed up with the numbers, I'd hire the numbers guy every single time. Not because I disrespect that person's degree, but because that person's proven it to me because they keep track of it. And, you know, I've got a salesperson for me, Jesse Jarvie. This guy, when he started, he had a Google spreadsheet of all of his data. And it was like, I was looking at this, I'm like, this guy knows what his conversion rate is from first conversation to appointment. He knows what his close ratio is. He knows how many dials he needs to make. It was so impressive. And like with that kind of a seller, just like with Aaron, it's not about enabling them with the CRM stuff, right? It's about how do I make this person better and put them in the right opportunities at the right time, because their job should be about qualification and closing, not about finding, right? Yes. And that's my responsibility as a leader, is to find as much as I can for them, because I know what it's like to dial, right? And salespeople, if I can put them in front of more opportunities where they're qualifying and closing, I think we get better results. That doesn't mean a salesperson doesn't need to keep prospecting, but that's kind of like but
it's that healthy balance, man. Because I've watched sales organizations that bring in the SDR program, and then the reps get lazy and they stop doing it. And then when they got to go out and fight for it, like today, right? Today, you're going to have to go out and get after it. And that's where you got to really watch, you know, that balance. And at the end of the day, what I've always said, if you door pull and you're successful, like, you still got to call these people.
Yeah.
You know, we have another rep, Caleb, who's a young guy just coming in, like crushing it. You know, he's running 10 to 15 appointments a week, you know, right off the rip. And it's interesting, you know, and we were talking the other day and he goes, yeah, you know, I need to bring my prospecting back up a little bit. And I'm like, well, just, man, like, print 25 of your prospects out the night before and put that in your car and like call those people as you're driving around to different appointments. And, you know, when you prepare and have that in front of you, it's much easier to just follow that flow. You know, I rode around my binder. I think I told you this. I had my binder that had baseball card slots, and I just had all my business cards in it. And I would just ride around in my car and flip pages and dial. Like, you know, and sometimes I was just dialing just to check in. I knew it wasn't time, but it was somebody that I had prospected before that I knew it wasn't ready. And I was just, hey, man, how's it going? You know, I haven't talked to you in a while. Just want to see, you know, how's your kids been? You know, and really wanting to understand and build that relationship over time. I will say, like, Terry here has done that. Like, you could tell, man, like he knows his prospects, even when it's somebody he's not actively selling in pipeline. he's talking to those people, you know.
Hey, yeah, when we were prepping for this beforehand, you were sharing with me, like we were just cold call pitching one another, and I really liked your approach, and I bet the audience would love to hear that again. So, like, share what you say when you first cold call
You
somebody.
know, I love calling, and the first thing that I love to do is when I'm going to call, I want to say the person's name. I hate for salespeople out there. Do not call people's phone and say, "Hey, is this Brent? Hey, is this Bob?" Like, you just called my cell phone. Like, don't like just announce like you're supposed to call. So I'm big on, "Hey, Brent, how's it going, man?" And they're like, "Oh, it's going great." Oh man, awesome. Weather's been great. Maybe even some small talk. And I'll immediately go into, "Hey, look, this is my first time calling you. So you don't know me. And I apologize for coming off like we know each other. But hey, I just want to see if you can help me out with something," and stop. And I assure you that 90% of the time, a person is going to say, "Sure, what can I help you out with?" And don't say the term, "Hey, are you busy right now?"
Right.
Like, I had one call me earlier today, and my exact response was, "Yeah, I'm a CEO of a company. Of course I'm busy." like you can't set yourself up for them to tell you no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or even saying, like, I've done it where I've said, "Hey, I'm not a telemarketer." like I'm a real person.
Right.
So don't hang up on me. And I think that's okay. And I think that I think multiple touches is critical too. So I think when you're calling and you're connecting on LinkedIn and you're connecting on Facebook or Instagram and connecting, look at their post, understand what's going on in their world, comment on them, multiple angles of, I guess, relevance is critical in sales, right? Because now, like, it's not really a cold call. It's, "Oh, that's that guy that commented on my post."
The thing I like that you shared that I'd love to try, it was, "This is the first time I'm calling you." That gives me, as the person receiving that call, the opportunity to say, "Okay, I'm probably not into this. Let's talk at another time," or give you the respect. And the other thing that I try to appeal to too is you use that 4-letter word, help, and you appealed to the human condition. And my experience is, anytime we ask for help, the humanity in us doesn't want to say go away, right? And I don't mean to use that as a crutch, but when I ask respectfully, and you and I cold call differently. I told you earlier that when I call somebody, I might say something like, "Hey, Shawn, this is Brent Morris. I'm calling from Success Computer Consulting here in Minneapolis. This is a cold call. Do you have a moment?" And for me, I set out to build a sales organization that was steeped in honesty, integrity, and transparency. And I mean to start that off from the very beginning. That's not how every salesperson does it. I teach that to everybody who's here. Some like it, some don't. I don't share it with them because I expect them to use it that way. I share it with them because we all need to find ways to get in.
Yes.
And for me, that's worked. And sometimes people hang up on me, and that's okay. I hang up on cold callers. I get it a lot. And I rarely take cold calls, but when I do, it's because they've done something that's more human in their approach and more honest. And that's one of the reasons I liked your approach so much.
I think another thing too, a tactic that works, and I've used this in the past, is say, "Hey, this is Shawn with Intellicom. Have you heard of us?" And they'll say no, and I'll say, "Really? You've never heard of Intellicom?"
How is that possible, Shawn?
Right. Like, you see what I'm saying? It's like you're creating this. And I did that a lot in the very beginning when we didn't have all this referenceable material and things that we've done. I wanted to feel like I was the big company, right? And I would say that, and come out in that form. And I think that when you do that, you're building some credibility. And if you're a salesperson that works for an organization and you don't believe in the organization, that is gonna come out every time.
Yeah,
That's one thing about Jesse, man. Like, you can hear it in Jesse's voice. Like, he believes in success and what you guys can do. And like that shows. So I think that's very important. Whether if you're selling, EJ, I know you're watching, selling pools, or pool supplies or whatever it may be, like you got to be bought in to the organization, the core values of the organization, and be behind it. I will tell you the successful folks on my team today they'll say it, they bleed blue, right? They're in this, and they're very passionate about what we do. And I think sales at any level, any company, any job, it's almost like being your own entrepreneur, right?
Absolutely.
Like you get to be your own person. You get to be your own. Yeah, you have a sales manager, and yeah, you have things to respond to and things that you have to do. That's life. I own my own business, and I still have to do that. You're answering to somebody. I answer to all my employees and my clients, so it's part of it. But I think that in sales, that's the cool part about it is you get to create what job. I tell this to people all the time. What job can you go get that you don't have to have this crazy degree, do surgery on people, own your own business and beat your head against the wall because it's freaking hard, and make $200,000, $250,000, $300,000.
Well, and if you're doing, the men and women that have been doing this for a long time have figured out how to maximize their time, and they're the ones that make sales look sexy. You know what I mean? Like they show up at 10 and leave at 3, and they take great vacations. And there are people out there that haven't earned that, but by and large, the majority of them have. And it's possible, but I think the perception of sales is that everybody's that way. All of us kind of have it easy. We're going out to the bars and we're going on great vacations, and if we're good enough, we go to President's Club and we're doing nothing but celebrating all the time. And so other people look at us and they think we're just a bunch of screwballs. But what they don't see is all of that hard work and all of the times where I had to go home and look at my wife or look in the mirror and be like, shit, I didn't set any appointments today. Or I lost that deal to somebody else because they were better sellers than me. Like, I know we're better than that, but they did a better job than I did. How did I lose that deal, right? And that's just hard, right? People don't see
it's a lot of mental stress, man.
It's defeat. It feels awful sometimes, right? And so that's why it's important to work out every now and then, or find an outlet that's reasonably healthy. That's not about drinking and smoking all the time.
Yes.
No. That's no judgment, by the way. Drink and smoke if it makes you feel better, but at the end of the day, we got to show up and do our jobs well.
Brent and Shawn, I got to chime in here real quick, and I know Shawn, you're gonna probably have an opinion on this because you've talked to me about it several times. So we had a comment come in just a few minutes ago. Don't you think the percentage of communication in these days is a text rather than a phone call? 90% of people will answer a text than a phone call.
I got an opinion about that. I'll let you.
I had a feeling one of y'all might.
Yeah, I think that, Joey, I think that people, you're right. Text does work. I think the phone is underutilized today, and people try to hide behind a text and don't just pick up the phone and have the conversation. But I do believe that when you can text with your prospect and they engaged, there is an open, you have a better chance of closing. So I am a big fan of calling and then texting the person and maybe even saying, hey, Bob, it's Shawn. If you wouldn't mind, give me a holler right back. And I'm not going to go into this long text of, hey, it's Shawn from Intellicom. I'm reaching out to you to talk to you about your IT services. Because then there's, if they immediately shut down, then they can. But if getting that text that, hey, it's Shawn, give me a call back, like I would see that. They may say, Shawn who?
They haven't heard of Shawn Torres before.
Yes, right. Who the hell are these people? Yeah.
I'm going to maybe I'll respond a couple of ways. My opinion on this is what I meant earlier when I talked about the fundamentals. Like the fundamentals of sales is picking up the phone. And my opinion is we've gotten drunk on technology. Like it's too easy to pick up the phone and text or email somebody, and it's possible to hide behind that stuff. Now, I'm also 49 years old, right? So I'm getting a little older, and there's a younger generation that does things differently than me. And that's what I meant earlier also by saying, I'm not going to dictate to you how to get appointments, just get appointments. But at the end of the day, we're still dealing with this post-COVID BS. And I think the BS part of it is that kind of drunk on technology thing that I mean, we're in this webinar, and that's a good use of remote technology. But at the end of the day, I'd rather be in a room with Shawn talking, because I can sense his body language and his energy. And
Yes,
we as humans need that. And so I think it's important to pick up the phone and talk to people. I mean, connection, human connection. And I'm going to go back to that human condition. We respond to help, and we respond to humanity and being in the presence of other people too.
yes. Well, then you can also use your energy. And I'll tell you, I always like to figure out what are the tools in your tool belt, in any job, right? I know one of my tools in my tool belt is I get really excited, and I can get other people really excited with me, and people feed on that energy. And I think it's so important that when you are in a sales engagement, and say you're doing a demo, or even, how do you demo IT, right? It's not sexy, right? But when you can get somebody really excited about fixing their problem, and look, you as a sales professional should be excited. That to me is one thing that I will say for myself that I've had a lot of success in, is I get I've never made a commission check here at Intellicom, but I love the idea of walking in the door, meeting someone that told me they didn't need my help, uncovering a problem, showing them how I can fix it, watching it go through, and watching what it does to their organization. Man, I love that shit, man. And and watching those companies thrive and evolve because of what you're doing for them. And if you're not getting excited about that, right, and getting them fired up about what they're doing, so many people are so damn vague today, and they're dialing, and they're like, "Hey, this is Shawn from Intellicom. How you doing today?" You think they're going to want to, they're not going to engage in that call. But if you're like, "Hey, it's Shawn, how's it going?" Immediately, they're like, you never even know, man. Even if you're not selling them something, maybe you just made their day better. Maybe they're having a shit day too.
I love that you said that. I've become friends with another MSP owner out in LA, a guy by the name of Ivan Fernandez. He's an amazing person. And just 2 nights ago, I think it was, he sent me a recording of a cold call. And it was an MSP salesperson calling somebody else. And the thing that he said that I just loved, he said, "Hey, Shawn, this is so-and-so from XYZ company. Just wondering if you can put me in touch with the right person." And this person responded, and he said, "Gosh, I can just hear the smile in your voice. You sound like you love your job." And he complimented this woman on the other end of the line so meaningfully that she, you could hear it in her voice, how she just opened up. And then when she was far more willing to connect him up with who he was trying to reach out to. And then when he got on the phone with that person, his first comment to that guy was, "What do you guys do at your business to create the kind of culture where people just seem happy all the time?" And it was this heartfelt comment that warmed these people up. And it was that's what I'm talking about.
Because you should be excited. It's exciting. It's funny. I sat at a conference a year ago, and they asked all these people in the room, it was a sales session, and they asked, who in the room enjoys making cold calls? And it was all these IT professionals and owners. I was the only damn person in the room that raised my hand. No shit, Brent. I stood up and looked at everybody in the room and said, "Y'all should all be ashamed of yourselves, because if you are not willing to pick up the damn phone for your own damn business and go get business, why the hell would anybody ever want to do business with you?" That's crazy to me. And I feel like I owe that to my staff. I owe that to the engineers that are here. I owe that to the field technicians that are here, to the project managers. I tell my sales team all the time, we owe them. They make us look good every day. They do a kick-ass job. We owe them the ability to go out and get them in front of these clients and help them, because they can.
The right clients. Yeah, you're right.
Yes, we owe them.
It's important to talk about that too. I got a buddy of mine who owns a business, and he's got 50 people that work in his company, and he says every decision I make affects not just those 50 people, but the average American family is 4 people, so I'm affecting 200 people's lives with every decision that I make. And so I've got to do that with that in mind. And when it comes to the people that are behind the scenes doing this work, nobody calls a help desk happy, right? I mean, what's the typical MO? I have a computer issue. I do my best to solve it on my own. And the longer it takes me to solve it on my own, I reboot 3 times, the more ticked off I get. So by the time I'm calling in telecom or success, I ain't happy because I tried to avoid you to begin with. And those people are getting beat up. So they're not hearing, nice, fun Brent on pushing the bar. They're hearing, hey, I got a computer issue. I need you to fix it. And they're like, oh, so nice to talk to you. Right?
Pick me up. I'll make you money.
I love that. I love that. It's true.
That's my phone on my desk. I love it. But it's funny you say that, Brent, because I think trying to teach people an understanding of how to communicate. And I remember back at Verizon when I worked in, I was in sales. I still did customer service when people would walk in pissed off because their phone wasn't working, right? And we didn't have a help desk there. I was the front line guy, right? And they would walk in and I'd have people throw their phone on the counter at me and, my phone's not working. I need this damn thing to work. They're pissed off, and I get it. Like, we all need our phone. And I used to always try to de-escalate the scenario immediately. And I've always been a fan of all right, I like to listen. I'm going to acknowledge. I'm going to repeat, right? And then I'm going to solve. And I think that what I've always tried to do is listen to the person. And I even think this goes into sales and sales process too. Because think about it, man. Like, when you're talking to a prospect in a discovery meeting and they say they have an issue, 9 times out of 10, sales professionals are like, oh, they said they hate their IT company. They're ready to buy. And they'll come back to the office like, oh, we're going to close this deal in a week. And I always laugh. And I'm like, well, tell me more about why and how. And I think that what people forget is if they say they're having an issue, dig deeper and be like, tell me more about that. And tell me how that impacts the business. And then you get them to say it and repeat it. And then you want to confirm in that same meeting, hey, Bob, look, I really appreciate you meeting with us today. I just want to make sure that we're clear before we go back to the drawing board and do our assessment. These are the areas of the pain of where you're having issues, and make them say it again. I learned that at Verizon because I felt like it always opened up the door and it kind of created them to understand what that pain point really is. And you really want to validate. And I always like to ask the question, is that pain enough that you would pay more to fix it? And that always opens up the cost conversation, right?
Right.
Which so many people want to get into. And I always learned that at the gym when I had the gym. The first business that Jim and I opened was at Anytime Fitness. And every single person that called or came to the gym, the first question they always asked, how much is it?
How much? Yeah.
And I used to always say, well, that depends. Because your ultimate objective, and they would call all the time. They'd call, Anytime Fitness and say, Shawn, how can I help you? Hey, Shawn, how much is y'all's membership? And 9 times out of 10, I used to always say $20,000. and people would just stop and they would laugh and they'd be like, no, seriously, how much is it? I'm like, we charge $20,000 a month. Is that a lot? And they would laugh, and I'd say, look, that really varies. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to go ahead and invite you over to the gym so I can show you around, because me just giving you a price over the phone isn't going to value what you coming here to see what we have to offer. And then let's make a decision from there. Is that cool? How about Tuesday at 5:30? And I think that most people just wanted to give into the number. And we had sales folks at the gym that did that had low sales numbers because they couldn't get the client to the facility, And I think a lot of times I'm sure you see this all the time, people ask, like, what is it going to cost for me to get started with IT?
I mean,
And
I think that's a fair question to ask, especially as someone's trying to evaluate what they're doing. There's ways to answer that don't pigeonhole you into the number. But the thing that you said that really resonated with me, you talked about listening and validation. And a little secret here, the best place to practice that is at home with your wife, your kids, your parents, your brothers, your sisters. Like they're the ones that need it from us most. But I think the market needs it too. And I have the propensity to show up and not shut up. And one of the things I've had to practice, 2 words that I'm trying to use as frequently as possible. Say more. Tell me more. What do you mean by that? Help me understand that a little bit better. Just trying to find ways to get people to share a little bit more. And people at the end of the day, they want to talk about themselves or their challenges or what they've done well or the things that they're proud of or their families. It's our job to listen for the things that really matter to somebody, because no matter what we're talking about, invariably we get to the point where they expose what really matters to them. And the second part of that is validating it. That sounds tough. Or, wow, that sounds like you've really experienced a lot of success there. Gosh, Shawn, you built a hell of a business. How can I do that too?
It's funny you say that, man. I was in a meeting one day in our quarterly, and a good friend of mine, Kyle, he comes in and runs our quarterly meetings when we're planning. He held up a sign, and it said this.
Love it.
And he goes, you know what that stands for? And I was like, what's that? He goes, why am I talking? Because I'm a talker too, man. And I was like, you know what? He is so right, and it's true. That's my MO, man. My wife tells me all the time, like, I will answer the question before she even gets it all the way out, just because I'm just so quick, right? And I think that's part of like what I've had to do in this company, because I'm answering questions all day and I got all these things getting thrown at me left and right, from operations, from finance, from HR, from sales. And you're just trying to navigate through the day. But I did an exercise at one of my CEO peer groups on active listening. And it was interesting, man, how much of a non-active listener I am. You're right, man. It is a challenge, and it's always intriguing. You said it, like, tell me more about that.
Mm-hmm.
And just listening and letting them talk to you more about what's going on. And sometimes it's funny what I've noticed, and I'm sure you've done this too. They'll answer their own question.
Totally.
And awareness, man, like when you listen to what they're saying, I've watched sales reps you could tell they're not actively listening because they're just waiting to get to the next part and to get to talk. Right. And that active listening. And I've watched so many reps just miss it. And I'm like, it's been very difficult for me at times to like wait, and I'll overstep it and I'll go, do the deal or whatever. Or like I've waited and I get in the car and I'm like, so tell me what you think. What do you think? And they're like, I don't know. I'm like, I know you missed it like 4 or 5 times, but it's okay. I was like, it's okay. Like, yeah. let's go through that process again. Cause I think that as a sales leader, and this is for all you sales managers out there that are running a sales team, you do not work for the company. You work for your sales team.
Yeah.
And you should always know that it's okay for them to fail. And you want them to try and make the mistake, and coach them and show them where they made the mistake and how they get through it next time. And I've had to learn that as a leader. Like, people are going to fail. They're going to screw things up. Like, it's your job as a coach to coach them and work through it, right? Football teams don't win every game, and they still make it to the Super Bowl.
Some of the best leaders I respect are the ones that are usually the quietest. And the more quiet they are, when they do talk, people kind of lean in because they don't expect it. But, the whole listening thing, my wife is she's quick to hold me accountable.
Oh yeah, that's.
But she also understands that this is a practice, and I need to get better at it. And I've become, I think, at least I try to become a better parent, better father, and better husband. But my daughter, I've got a 17-year-old daughter, and my relationship with her is way different when I don't tell her what she needs to do, when I don't poke at what she's doing, and I just say, "What are you doing? Why is that? Tell me more about why you're doing it." It's amazing what happens. And I think as leaders, I might know the answer, but it's better that I help somebody find the way to the answer as opposed to just giving it to them. And that's, I like what you said about sales managers. My job isn't to work for the company. It's to work in the service of the people that I have the opportunity to manage. And manage doesn't mean do this more, do this better. It means what's in your way. How do I push the bar out of your way, to use your title?
Overcoming obstacles and understanding what's there, challenging the sales professional to think in a different way, because every deal's different. They're never the same. Going through that process with them and making them think differently about things. Like so many times, man, you lose a deal, right? And it's frustrating. It pisses you off. And I've heard so many reps like, "Oh, well, yeah, they just went with their friends. They are this person." And I've always been the one to say, "Well, no, they outsold you."
Right.
And they provided more value, and that's okay. I said, if I was you, I would reach out to that prospect and admit where you were wrong, admit that you didn't do the right thing, and ask for guidance on what you could have done differently. So you can learn moving forward. And I think that, I tell my reps all the time, listen to your calls, listen to your call, critique yourself and what you did. And when you can know what you did wrong and where you missed it, that's what sales process is about, right? Sales process isn't for me to know where you are in your deal. It's for you to know where you are in your deal and what steps did you take. And maybe you missed something, and that's okay. Stop and go back to that stage.
And if we're doing it right, you and I are at a place, where we're more responsible for the organization. And the truth is, I'm sometimes so far removed from what's actually happening in the deal stages that you, the rep, might know better than me. And you should influence or change what we're doing. And I've had a lot of reps. I mean, some of the best changes we've made in this business have come because rep has said, we should do it this way, or this isn't working anymore, or this messaging doesn't work, or we need to do this marketing thing, or whatever it might be. My boss says to me all the time, we've got 110 smart people that work for us. We'd be stupid not to listen to them.
Yes.
When put that way, man, that places a lot of responsibility on shutting up.
What's true. I mean, look, I think that goes across the whole organization, operations, marketing, finance. You're right. And that's been, especially for me, from being the creator to moving along, like what worked for me, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, may not work today for that person.
Right.
So you have to continuously adapt and change and evolve as a sales professional. I think that's what makes it hard. Is going back to the beginning of the conversation. I think this year, with the state of where the economy is, with interest rates where they are, with cash not being as flux as it once was, you as a sales professional are going to have to work extremely hard. Don't give up. Don't make that next dial on Friday at 4:24 in the afternoon. And you're like, I'm not going to make that call because it's Friday at 4:30. Don't do that. Don't. Think about it. What is everybody doing at 4:30 in the afternoon on a Friday? Most people, they're in a good mood. Yeah. They're about to get off for the weekend. They're happy. They're not thinking about all that shit that blew up on them all week in their department. Or you're catching that person, and it's an easy open and say, "Hey, Brent, what you got going on this weekend, man?" And they're like, "Oh man, I got my daughter's cheer competition, or I'm going hunting with some buddies. I'm going fishing." Like, it's an easy way to open the dialogue. And I used to always remember as a young sales professional, like Friday, I'd make excuses for myself. Oh, I'm not calling today because tomorrow is a holiday, or I'm not calling today because it's Friday, or it's raining outside. I'm not going to go cold call. You know how many times that I went and door pulled in the damn rain, and so many people, when I ran in the door soaking wet, I'll tell you what they did. They gave me the time of day.
That's right.
I-
You said something else that really resonated with me. I mean, I was not a good salesperson when I first started out. I kind of
Me
sucked.
neither. It's terrible.
And one of the things that I found out about the organization, I was selling voice and data services to small and medium-sized businesses here in the Twin Cities. And I found out that a lot of salespeople would show up at 8:30 and they'd leave at 4:30. But we'd have these leads that would call in sometimes at 7:30 or at 4:59 or at 5:27. And so I would come in early and I'd just sit there and wait sometimes. I mean, I wouldn't just sit there and wait, but you get lucky, right? When nobody else is there, you're going to do that. And Shawn, how many times, I mean, like, do you work normal working hours?
No.
You just talked about being up at 4 a.m., taking a flight out of Dallas, Texas. I mean, if I was a good sales rep, I might try to reach it at 4:30 a.m. Would you take that call?
Absolutely.
Somebody hustling at 4:30 a.m. and you're probably going to work this weekend and you're probably going to be at the office today till 5:15 or 5:30.
I would take the call. If you walked in my door on Friday at 4:15 in the afternoon, 4:30 in the afternoon, I would have more respect to sit down and talk to you than you call me at Monday at 10 a.m. Because I know that you're out there getting after it. Man, it's true. I'll tell them all. Email them on a Saturday or Sunday. You know what's cool about a Saturday or Sunday? I have less noise in my inbox. And owners are looking at their email on the weekends.
Definitely. And you can set it up to email automatically for you on Saturday too, or Sunday.
Technology we have today, like it's man. And you know, and I think back to, and look, if you want to be an 8 to 5 guy or girl, like that's cool. There's nothing wrong with that. Because I do think that you got to look at what you want to get out of whatever you're doing. And I don't care if you're a janitor or a salesperson or a help desk person. Like if you want more out of what you're doing, it's all about what you put into it. And a lot of people want instant return for the efforts that they put forth today. And unfortunately, and I preach this to everybody, life really doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't.
And if you're willing to put your head down and focus on doing the right thing and grind, like life is a grind. And I tell everybody for years, Brent, when I was building this company, I could have quit so many times and just went and got a job in sales and went and made $200,000. Deposits and withdrawals, EJ, you know it, man.
Well, hey,
make no deposits, get no withdrawals.
The thing that impressed me when you and I first started talking is you told me what the first 3 years of revenue were like for you. I don't know if I'm sure you've told this to the audience before, but whomever's on right now, I think it'd be cool to hear. Like, what were those first years for you? Like, were you just rolling in the dough?
In 2009, when we first started the company, we did $8,400 in top line revenue. So $8,400 in revenue total. And I have a business partner and we're 50-50. So year two, in 2010, we did 64,000. So in 2 years, we didn't break $100,000. And I was a extremely successful salesperson at Verizon Wireless, making over $200,000 a year, selling cell phones. And I knew that I had an ability that I could go out there and do it. But I also knew that if I just kept my head down and kept trying and showing up every day, over and over and over again, it would work. And I knew I was looking at what I was doing wrong. I was looking at what was working, what wasn't working, and I was adapting. I was understanding how many calls was I having to make to convert to an appointment. And I was holding myself accountable to that every day, even when it wasn't having the results. And I tell everybody here, you're the one that's got to go home and look at your wife, look at your husband, look at yourself in the mirror and say, did I give it my all today? And I know this, every day I go home and I know that I'm giving the day my all. I'm gonna give it hell every day. You know, I didn't want to go do meetings and I control my own schedule. I could have emailed Brent and said, I'm tired and I'm going to go home and I'm not going to get on this podcast because I've been up since 4 a.m. and running and gunning, but I know I got work to do, and there's things that's got to get going. Taylor, I didn't catch that message, buddy, that popped up on the screen.
I was saying, I don't know if you remember, you and I worked out the math. I've got it broken down, how that growth and that grind takes.
Yes. What was the percentage of total growth in the 13 years?
Oh, it's like ridiculous. That's the whole reason I did it in the first place. I wanted to see year one in 2023.
And trying to figure out the number. There it is.
Good Lord. That's awesome.
These are the kind of metrics I want to see on the marketing side. 235,000 increase.
Yeah, you want to grind. You want to grind. That right there is a grind.
And I think what that says to me is if I'm willing to suffer a little bit, I might get something beautiful as a result of it. And I mean, in my life, nothing good has come nothing easy. Nobody values being given something. Like, it's nice to get something, but at the end of the day, I'm not going to value it if I didn't have to work for it or earn it. And so when I can put the effort into it, especially if there's some suffering into it, you brought up weightlifting and training. I mean, I've done Ironmans before. You want to talk about suffering? Go do a 140-mile race and spend 14 hours doing it. Yeah, I was slow.
It's a suffer though.
But there's something of value when you can show up to the finish line. You show up to the start line. You put a year of training into it, and you can look at the day ahead of you and think, "I've done everything I needed to do. This is just a celebration now."
Yes,
of all that hard work. And that's the same thing with door knocking, cold calling sales. If you put the work in, then one day you're going to get that 6-figure commission check. And I'll tell you what, there's nothing more valuable to me than to take a look at a commission statement for a rep and being able to email it to them, and it's the biggest check they've ever gotten. That's a fun thing to do. That's exciting because you're changing lives at that point. And that's not me changing lives.
$30,000 and $40,000 check.
It's beautiful. They're changing their own lives.
That's what your buddy might have made in a whole year going to work, and all we do is talk to people. That's what I was getting at earlier. Like, what job can you do? And you said it. It's not that you won't do it. You don't have the will to come in every day and do what's necessary. Fight for it. Looking at those numbers and thinking back to those days, I will tell you, Brent, it was extremely stressful. Like, I had a wife at home telling me to go get a real job. I had people telling me left and right that I should just go get a job. I'm good at sales. You can get out there and make money. Like, I was selling fucking T-shirts on the street for Saints games and shit to try to make money to pay my damn bills. And at the same time, I was still humble enough every day to get up and get after it. And I think that going back to, like you said, man, like, it is a joy. I get more joy today. I could sell this company right now and walk away with my millions, no doubt in my mind. But I get to come in every day and watch people grow in their career and expand and just, I've watched people have their first children and their first home and their first nice car, or Terry's first $1,000 pair of Nike Jordans. And I have more excitement in that than making any dollar amount that I've ever made in my whole life. Like, Shawn, that to me is joy.
Yeah. It is beautiful.
You can't buy that, man. Like, you can't buy that shit. And that's what people ask me all the time. What is my why? Why do I do what I do? Like, that's why right there. Because I love this shit, man. I get a kick out of it, watching them grow and scale. And when they win, man, and like to see it on their face, like when they get that deal, like that to me is just a joy.
And knowing you had like, you didn't do the work, but you had a piece of it. And that's the part that I get out of being in the position that I'm in, is I have an opportunity to influence some things. If I'm humble enough to be aware of what people need, and the joy that I get out of it is being of service to people, whether it's to the employees that work here, or to my clients, or to my family, or to other MSP owners or other salespeople. Like, I don't have a problem talking to any of my competition. I mean, shoot, nope. You and I could be competing against each other. I don't care if we were in each other's backyard. And I know you introduced me to a guy who's in your backyard who I have a ton of respect for.
And
Yeah,
I'm friends with him, man. We talk to each other. Me and Don talk all the time, man. And I love Don. And we've taken business from each other. And like, it's business. It's nothing personal. And I know every day he's trying to kick my ass, and every day I'm trying to kick his ass. Like, we know that,
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I respect the hell out of him, and he's been a good mentor for me. And I think that people need to be vulnerable, be vulnerable, ask for help, understand what you can do to be better. And when you open up to that and really build true relationships and truly care, I never forget the first time talking to Jesse, man. Jesse flat out told me, man, I came to work here to work for Brent. And that's what I wanted to be, and like, man, that kid is a rock star. And he's got a super bright future ahead of him, and just incredibly smart and hungry. And I think there's 3 traits that you have to be good at this. You got to be hungry, you got to be humble, and you got to be smart. And smart doesn't mean book smart.
No.
Smart means holding yourself accountable. Smart means showing up every day, making good decisions, doing the right thing. And sometimes people got to work harder at that side. I always had to work harder. When Jimmy and I were college roommates, man, like, Jimmy's freaking book smart. He could not study for things like I had to study and would make an A. My ass had to like cram in the book nonstop. And it's just, I'm still like that today, but I never made excuses and was like, oh, well, man, he just gets to get an A and didn't even try. I studied the same amount of time as him. So like, I think remember that as a sales professional, don't look at what other people are doing and try to compare yourself to like, oh, well, why did Aaron only have to make 4 calls and I made 60 and she got 4 meetings? What the hell? Like, stop.
Yeah.
And look at what you're doing. And maybe you need to make 80 dials to get there. But I can assure you
that, man, I needed to.
Me too. Like, I started that way. And eventually, this, Brent, eventually that stops.
It does.
Like, that will go away and you will get better at it. It's like, I use this analogy all the time, and I know we're coming up on our time and I want to get wrapped up on Friday, but I'm terrible at golf. Terrible. So when I go play golf with my guys here that are all really good, Carl, TC, Brett, they're good. They're good at golf. EJ, you play golf with me, buddy. You're watching this. They could bring probably 1 box of balls, like 3 balls in the box. I got to bring the whole case in my cart. Like, because I'm going to slice and lose them all day. But I know that going into it, right? But there's one difference between myself and them. There's one difference. They've swung that club a lot more than I have.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the moral of that, and what I'm trying to get to for all the listeners, you may have to make 80, 100 dials. That number is going to come down because you're going to adjust in what you're doing and how you're doing it. And you're going to get better and better and better. Do not defeat yourself. Do not give up. Stay focused and just keep doing it. Listen to the calls. Understand what's there. Ask for help. Go to that successful rep and say, hey, would you mind listening to this call? Don't be embarrassed. Role play with that person and don't be the easy role player and just, oh yeah, thanks, Bob. Yeah, I'll take your meeting. Be the difficult one that is going to be what it's like in real life and do that. And I think that's so important.
Yeah, we could spend a whole podcast about how you pick yourself up when you get your butt kicked.
Yeah.
What do people do to do that? I mean, that'd be a whole other hour, 2, 3 hours. I mean, be a student, listen, study the human condition, try to figure out what you need to do to connect with people.
Yes. Show up every day and be consistent. And if you just show up every day and are consistent and you walk in at 7:30 and you walk out the door at 5:30 and you put your head down and you go after it every day, like, you will be successful. I don't give a shit what you're doing. You will be successful at it. So, well, look, man, I'm so glad we got to do this. We definitely got to do this again. I'm excited to get you in town. So you definitely got to let me know when you're ready to come in town.
Anytime, man. Usually the winter's best time to
I would
visit
love
you.
to come up there and see you. I'm just not coming right now because I don't like cold.
We got snow for the first time last night.
Maybe this summer I'll come see you, and when it's warm.
You visit me in the summer, I'll visit you in the winter.
Look, if anybody wants to connect, I'm obviously on LinkedIn, Facebook. Definitely reach out to Brent. Here's his LinkedIn. I would 100% recommend you reaching out to him and connecting with him. Follow him, learn from him. If you want to be good at sales and you want to be a real sales professional, he's somebody that you can learn from that's gone through the trials and tribulations of doing the hard stuff. So don't be afraid to reach out. I reached out to Brent on a whim, and we did a call and we hit it off. And I feel like I've known the guy now for forever. We did dinner when we were at Exchange together. Just a great story and just incredible things that he's done in his life. So just an all-around good person. And it's always awesome to meet good people. So I appreciate that, man. He did do a good job speaking in front of everybody, even though he said he didn't feel like he was going to get up there and kill it. And he did. He brought the energy. And of all the sessions I went to, man, I was so impressed about how many people stayed after your session and were asking you for your phone number and for advice. So you got great things ahead of you, man. I'm proud to call you my friend. And I appreciate you getting on here today, man. I really do.
Likewise. Thanks for having me.
So, all right, everybody, look, let's have a great weekend. Let's enjoy ourselves. Let's enjoy life. Let's be happy the fact that we woke up today and we get to put our shoes on and we get to walk out and breathe air, because there's some people that didn't get to do that today. So let's remember that. So if you got your ass kicked today in sales, I'm sorry. You might get your ass kicked again on Monday, but just keep doing it.
Nice job.
And I assure you will win. So thank y'all. I appreciate everybody joining in. We'll get this thing posted out, and have a great weekend. Thanks.